The toast that silenced the table. Lena Maxwell story. The smell of roasted turkey and pine candles had always meant safety to me. 14 people crowded around Mom's dining table that Thanksgiving, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors who'd somehow become permanent fixtures at every holiday for the past decade. Glasses clinked. Children laughed. Someone had burned the rolls again and nobody cared. I was home for 72 hours. That was all the Navy had given me. Commander Lena Maxwell, United States Naval Intelligence. 31 years old, 2 commendations, 1 classified operation I couldn't talk about even under sodium pentothal, and currently standing in my mother's kitchen wearing a borrowed apron that said "World's Okayest Chef" because I'd spilled cranberry sauce on my dress blues 20 minutes after arriving. I hadn't told anyone what I actually did. As far as the family knew, I pushed papers at a naval base somewhere cold and unimportant. That was the story. That was always the story. "Lena, come sit," Aunt Rosa called from the table. "Your mother is about to do that." I dried my hands on a dish towel and walked into the dining room, squeezing into the chair between my 14-year-old cousin Marcus and my uncle Theodore, who smelled powerfully of pipe tobacco and misplaced opinions. The table looked beautiful. Mom had always had that gift, turning chaos into elegance with a tablecloth and some candles. And there was Diane. My sister sat at the opposite end of the table from me, radiant in a burgundy dress, her husband David's arm draped casually over her chair. Dr. Diane Maxwell Hartley. Johns Hopkins Medical School, cardiothoracic surgery, the family's brightest star, burning so hard you needed sunglasses just to look at her directly. I loved my sister. I want to be clear about that before everything that follows. I loved her completely, the way you love someone who shares your blood and your childhood bedroom and the memory of your father's funeral. I loved her even when it hurt. I loved her especially then. Mom stood at the head of the table, wine glass raised, cheeks already flushed from the single glass of Merlot she allowed herself each holiday. She was 63 and still beautiful, silver-streaked hair pinned back, wearing the pearl earrings Dad had given her on their 20th anniversary. "I want to say a few words," she announced, and the table quieted. I reached for my water glass. "This family has been through so much," Mom began, her voice wavering with practiced emotion. She was never not performing, my mother. Even her genuine moments had a theatrical quality, as if she'd rehearsed sincerity in the mirror. "And every Thanksgiving I count my blessings. But this year," she paused, turning to beam at Diane, "this year I have to acknowledge something extraordinary." Diane dipped her head modestly. David squeezed her shoulder. "My daughter Diane," Mom said, her voice swelling, "performed a surgery last month that saved the life of a 4-year-old child. 4 years old." She let that hang in the air. Aunt Rosa pressed a hand to her chest. "She is brilliant, she is gifted. She is everything I prayed for when I was carrying her." Applause around the table. Marcus whooped. I clapped too, genuinely, because Diane deserved it. She had saved a child's life. That was real, that mattered. "One daughter is a doctor," Mom continued, laughing lightly, and I felt the table's energy shift in a way I recognized from years of reading Rooms for a Living. "The other is a maid." Laughter. 14 people laughing, because Mom was looking directly at me with that particular smile she'd perfected over 30 years. The one that said, "It's just a joke, sweetheart. Why are you always so sensitive?" And the apron, the stupid borrowed apron I was still wearing, had apparently made the joke land beautifully. "World's Okayest Chef." The laughter went on 4 seconds too long. I counted. In my line of work, you count things like that. You measure silences and sounds the way a surgeon measures blood pressure. Information lives in duration. I smiled. I raised my water glass with everyone else. I let it pass, because I was good at letting things pass. I'd been letting things pass my entire life. Every holiday, every phone call where Mom sighed when she asked what I was up to, and I said, "Still at the base, Mom." Nothing exciting, because my work required silence, and I had learned, somewhere along the way, to bring that silence home with me like luggage I never unpacked. The meal continued. Turkey was carved. Stories were told. Uncle Theodore had opinions about the economy. Cousin Marcus showed me a video on his phone that I pretended to understand. Diane caught my eye across the table once and mouthed sorry, and I shook my head slightly to tell her it was fine. It was fine. It was not fine. An hour later, plates cleared, dessert half eaten, the wine flowing freely enough that several conversations had merged into one loud, joyful argument about football. Mom stood again. "Before everyone disperses," she called out, "I want to say one more thing about Diane." "Set down my fork." "Been thinking," Mom said, "about legacy, about what we leave behind." And Diane, her voice caught, and this time I think the emotion was real. "Diane represents everything your father and I worked for. She's the proof that sacrifice means something, that raising children right means something. She reached across the table and took Diane's hand. And I just want to toast her again, to my doctor daughter who makes this family, Mom. My voice came out quiet, not loud. Not dramatic. The single word dropped into the room like a stone into still water, and the ripples spread fast, heads turning, conversations stopping, football argument dissolving mid-sentence. Even Marcus looked up from his phone. Mom blinked at me. Lena, I need to say something. Sweetheart, I'm in the middle of, I know, I'll be brief. Table was completely silent now. 14 people watching me. I could feel their discomfort like a physical pressure, that collective human instinct that recognizes a moment teetering on an edge, that holds its breath hopping it falls safely. I had spent 11 years in naval intelligence. I had sat across from men trained to resist interrogation. I had walked through rooms where a single wrong word meant the difference between life and classified catastrophe. I knew exactly how to hold a room, and I knew exactly how to speak into silence so that every syllable landed with precision. I stood up. First, I said, looking at Diane, my sister is extraordinary. What she did for that little girl is exactly what she's always done. She looked at an impossible problem and refused to let it stay impossible. Diane, you deserve every toast this family gives you, every single one. Diane's eyes were wet. Lena, I'm not finished. I said it gently, but I said it firmly, and she closed her mouth. I turned to my mother. Mom, I love you. I want you to know that's the foundation of everything I'm about to say. I love you, and I am not angry, and this isn't an attack. I paused. But I need you to know what your maid has been doing. Uncle Theodore coughed uncomfortably. Aunt Rosa reached for her wine. 18 months ago, I said, keeping my voice level and calm, I was stationed off the coast of a country I cannot name, on a vessel that officially did not exist, running an intelligence operation that has so far prevented 3 separate attacks on American civilian infrastructure. Power grids, water systems, the kind of targets that, if compromised, affect hospitals. I let that land. Hospitals like the one where Diane operates. Silence had changed quality. It was no longer the silence of discomfort. It was the silence of recalibration. I cannot tell you the details. I will never be able to tell you the details. There will be no headlines about what my team did. There will be no toast at Thanksgiving, because the nature of my work is that when it succeeds, nothing happens and nobody knows why. I looked around the table slowly, the way I'd learned to in briefing rooms, making contact, making sure every person felt individually addressed. 4 years ago, I spent 6 weeks undercover in a situation that required me to cut off all contact with this family. All contact. No calls, no emails, nothing. Mom called my commanding officer to report me as a missing person. I couldn't tell her what I was doing. I couldn't tell her I was alive. I had to trust that she would survive not knowing. Mom had set down her wine glass. Have 2 commendations from the Secretary of the Navy that I keep in a box under my bed, because displaying them would raise questions I'm not permitted to answer. I reached into the interior pocket of my dress jacket. I'd taken off the apron at some point during the meal, though I didn't remember doing it, and set a folded piece of paper on the table. That is not classified. That is a letter from a 4-star admiral that I'm allowed to carry. I've never shown it to anyone in this family. I'm showing it now not because I need validation, but because I need my mother to understand that her daughter has not spent 11 years being a maid. Nobody moved toward the letter. Nobody needed to. The fact of it was enough. I don't say any of this to diminish Diane, I continued. Diane's work is visible and it's beautiful and it absolutely deserves to be celebrated. But there is more than one way to save a child's life. Sometimes you save them in the operating room. Sometimes you save them by making sure the lights stay on in the city where the operating room exists. I picked up my water glass. So, Mom, I held her gaze. She was very still in the way that people go still when the ground shifts under them and they're waiting to find out how much it's going to move. I would like to offer a toast to Diane, who saves lives with her hands, and to everyone at this table who does important work that no one will ever fully understand. I paused. Including the woman who raised 2 daughters strong enough to carry the things they carry. Whatever you think of how you said it tonight, you made us both. I drank. For 3 full seconds nobody moved. Then Marcus, my 14-year-old cousin who barely looked up from his phone all evening, started clapping. Not the polite, slow clap of someone performing approval. The real kind, enthusiastic and slightly too loud. The way teenagers clap when something surprises them into sincerity. And then Aunt Rosa joined. And then David. And then the table, all of it. A wave moving from one end to the other, until even Uncle Theodore was nodding with the particular solemnity of a man who has realized he's in the presence of something he didn't expect. Diane was crying. She pressed 2 fingers to her lips and looked at me across the table, and in her eyes was the look we'd been trading since we were small, the one that predated language, the one that meant I see you, I've always seen you, I'm sorry it took the room this long. Mom sat very still. I sat back down. Under the table, Marcus leaned over and whispered, "That was insane." "Your pie," I whispered back. Later, after the table cleared, after the relatives migrated to the living room, after David had heroically redirected Uncle Theodore toward a football game, I found my mother in the kitchen, alone, washing dishes with the focused energy of someone working through something internally. I picked up a dish towel without being asked. We stood side by side in silence, the way we had 10,000 times when I was growing up, and for a while neither of us spoke. "I didn't know," she finally said. "I know you didn't. I thought I know what you thought." She handed me a wet dish. "Are you safe in this work? Usually, that's not reassuring. It's honest." She was quiet for a moment. Outside, through the kitchen window, the neighbor's porch light came on, a small orange glow against the November dark. "Your father would have understood," she said softly. "He was always better at letting people be mysteries." "Dad used to say that the most important things are invisible," I said. "I thought he meant feelings. I think now he might have meant something else too." Mom laughed quietly, a real laugh, short and surprised, the kind that breaks through grief unexpectedly. "He said that to everyone about everything. It was his answer to most of life's problems." Wasn't wrong. She handed me the last dish. We stood there, the sink empty, the kitchen smelling of soap and leftover turkey and years. "Proud of you," she said. She didn't look at me when she said it. She was looking at the dark window, at the orange light outside, at the invisible shape of something she was only now beginning to understand. "I've always been proud of you. I just didn't know," her voice faltered. "I didn't know the language." "You're learning it," I said. "That counts." She turned and looked at me fully then, my mother, who was complicated and flawed and theatrical, and mine, and she reached up and touched my face the way she had when I was very small, her palm against my cheek, her eyes full of the specific grief of a parent who realizes, too late and also just in time, that their child grew into someone magnificent in the dark without any applause in a direction they hadn't thought to look. "Come home more," she said. "When I can," I answered. Because that was the truest thing, and she was finally ready to hear it. Outside, the November dark held its secrets the way it always had. Inside, the lights stayed on. Sometimes the most important battles are the ones nobody sees. And sometimes the most important words are the ones spoken quietly, at a dinner table, in a borrowed apron, by a woman who had simply decided that tonight, just tonight, she was done being invisible.